The meatloaf was getting cold, but Megan kept checking her phone. Third time in 5 minutes. The screen lit up her face in that blue glow I'd grown to hate, and I could see Aaron flashing across the top. "Dad, can I have more mashed potatoes?" Ellie asked, her 10-year-old voice cutting through the tension that had been building in our dining room for weeks. Before we dive deeper into this story, I have one small request. Please subscribe, drop a like, comment, and hit that hype button to boost this channel so more people can discover these incredible Reddit stories. Sure, sweetheart. I spooned another helping onto her plate, watching my wife's thumbs dance across her screen. Max, our 8-year-old, was building a fort out of his green beans, completely oblivious to the fact that his mother was about to detonate our family like a hand grenade. Megan finally looked up, her perfectly styled blonde hair catching the overhead light. She'd been to the salon again today. Third time this month. Funny how she'd suddenly developed an interest in looking good after 15 years of marriage. "Tom, we need to talk," she said, setting her phone face down on the table. But not before I caught another glimpse of Aaron's name. Aaron Miles, my supposed best friend for the past decade. The guy who'd been my best man, who'd helped me build the deck in our backyard, who'd been over for dinner just last Sunday, sitting in the very chair where Ellie now sat, acting like butter wouldn't melt in his mouth. "Kids, go upstairs and get ready for bed," I said, my voice steady despite the ice forming in my chest. "But Dad, it's only 7:30. Max protested. "Now." Something in my tone must have registered because both kids grabbed their plates and headed for the kitchen without another word. Smart kids. They could feel the storm coming even if they didn't understand it. Megan waited until we heard their footsteps on the stairs before she spoke again. When she did, her words hit me like a sledgehammer to the gut. "I've been seeing Aaron for 6 months. I'm not sorry about it, and I'm not stopping. You can either accept it or be alone." Just like that. No build-up, no explanation, no apology. Just a cold, calculated statement delivered with the same tone she used to tell me we were out of milk. I stared at her across our dining room table, the same table where we'd shared thousands of meals, where we'd helped the kids with homework, where we'd planned vacations and discussed dreams. The same table where she'd just casually announced she'd been screwing my best friend for half a year. "Accept it," I repeated slowly, testing the words in my mouth like they were poison. "I deserve to be happy, Tom. You've been emotionally absent for years, working late, coming home tired, never talking about anything but construction schedules and weekend projects. Aaron listens to me. He makes me feel alive again." Her phone buzzed. She glanced at it, and I caught the ghost of a smile crossing her lips. "So, this is my fault," I said. "I'm not saying it's anyone's fault. I'm just saying this is how things are now. Aaron and I are together. His marriage with Rachel is over too. We're going to make this work, with or without your cooperation." The casual way she said it, like she was discussing rearranging furniture instead of destroying 2 families, made something cold and hard settle in my chest. This wasn't a moment of weakness or a mistake she regretted. This was a calculated decision, and she'd already moved past any concern for what it might do to me or our kids. "What about Ellie and Max?" "They'll adjust. Kids are resilient. And honestly, it might be better for them to see their parents actually happy instead of just going through the motions." Her phone buzzed again. This time she picked it up and actually smiled at whatever Aaron had sent her. Right there, not 3 feet from her husband of 15 years, she was exchanging sweet nothings with the man who'd been sitting at our dinner table, pretending to be my friend while he was planning to steal my wife. I stood up from the table, my chair scraping against the hardwood floor. "I need some air." "Tom, don't be dramatic. This doesn't have to be ugly. We can handle this like adults." I walked toward the kitchen, then stopped and turned back. Adults don't betray their spouses with their best friends. Adults don't abandon their families for a midlife crisis. And adults sure as hell don't sit there texting their lover while they're destroying their husband. For the first time, a flicker of something, Guilt, maybe, or just annoyance at being called out, crossed her face. But it was gone in an instant. "I'm going to errands tonight," she said. "We can talk more tomorrow when you've had time to process this." She stood up, grabbed her purse from the counter, and headed for the door. Just like that. 15 years of marriage, and she was walking out to spend the night with my best friend like it was the most natural thing in the world. I heard her car start and pull out of the driveway. Then silence. I stood in my kitchen, surrounded by the remnants of what had been a normal family dinner 20 minutes ago, and felt something fundamental shift inside me. The Tom who'd sat down to eat meatloaf with his family was gone. The Tom who'd trusted his wife and his best friend was gone and buried. What was left was someone colder, sharper, and a hell of a lot more dangerous than Megan or Aaron could possibly imagine. I walked upstairs to check on the kids. They were both in Ellie's room, and I could hear them whispering. "Is Mom coming back?" Max asked as I appeared in the doorway. "She's at a friend's house tonight," I said. "But you don't need to worry about that. I'm here, and I'm not going anywhere." I tucked them both into their beds, kissed their foreheads, and told them I loved them. Then I went back downstairs and started planning. The first thing I needed was evidence. Megan had been careless tonight, but she wouldn't stay that way. I needed to document everything before she got smart and started covering her tracks. I found her tablet in the bathroom, plugged in next to the sink where she always left it. She'd been so flustered about getting to errands that she'd forgotten to take it with her. Or maybe she just didn't think I'd have the balls to look. She was wrong about that too. The tablet was still logged into her messaging apps, and what I found there made my stomach turn. 6 months of explicit messages, photos I never wanted to see, and detailed plans for a future that didn't include me or our children except as obstacles to be managed. But it wasn't just the explicit content that hit me like a punch to the gut. It was the casual cruelty of how they talked about me. Tom's working late again, thank God. More time for us. He's so clueless. I almost feel sorry for him. Rachel's getting suspicious, but Tom hasn't figured out anything. He's always been slow. They'd been laughing at me. For months, while I'd been working 60-hour weeks to keep our family comfortable, while I'd been inviting Aaron over for barbecues and football games, they'd been conducting their affair and treating me like I was some kind of joke. The worst part was a message from just 3 days ago. Tom asked me to help him fix the deck railing this weekend. Should I tell him I've been screwing his wife on that deck while he's at work? Aaron had sent that. Aaron, who I'd considered closer than a brother. Aaron, who'd borrowed money from me last year when his auto shop was struggling. Aaron, who I'd trusted with everything, including apparently my wife. I took screenshots of everything. Every message, every photo, every casual betrayal. Then I copied them to a secure cloud account and emailed them to myself from 3 different addresses. If Megan thought she was going to gaslight me or make me look like the crazy one, she had another thing coming. By the time I was finished documenting their affair, it was past midnight. I sat in my garage, surrounded by the tools and projects that had apparently made me such a boring husband, and made a decision. Megan wanted me to accept her betrayal or be alone. She'd presented those as my only 2 options, like she was in control of this situation. She was about to learn how wrong she was. I wasn't going to accept anything, and I sure as hell wasn't going to be alone. But Megan and Aaron, by the time I was finished with them, they were going to wish they'd never met each other, let alone decided to destroy 2 families for their own selfish pleasure. I didn't scream that night. I didn't break anything or punch walls or do any of the dramatic things Megan probably expected. Instead, I just started plotting. And as I sat there in the quiet of my garage, planning the systematic destruction of 2 people who'd betrayed me in the worst possible way, I felt something I hadn't felt in months. I felt alive. I took the kids and left town before dawn. No dramatic confrontations, no shouting matches, no giving Megan the satisfaction of seeing me lose control. I just packed our essentials, loaded Ellie and Max into my truck, and drove 3 hours north to my brother Mike's place in Bangor. "Where are we going, Dad?" Ellie asked as we pulled out of our driveway at 5:30 in the morning. "On an adventure," I told her. "Uncle Mike's been asking us to visit for months." It wasn't entirely a lie. Mike had been asking us to visit. He just didn't know we were coming until I called him from a gas station an hour outside of town. "Tom? Jesus, it's 6 in the morning. What's wrong?" "Megan's been having an affair with Aaron for 6 months. She told me last night to accept it or be alone. I'm taking option 3. Mike was quiet for a long moment. He'd never particularly liked Megan, though he'd been polite about it for the sake of family harmony. "How long do you need?" "A week, maybe 2, just until I figure out my next move." "The kids are welcome as long as you need. But Tom, whatever you're planning, don't do anything stupid." I looked at my children in the rearview mirror, both of them staring out the windows at the unfamiliar landscape. Define stupid. By the time Megan woke up and realized we were gone, we were already at Mike's house, and I was making pancakes while my kids played with their cousins in the backyard. My phone had been buzzing non-stop since 8 a.m., but I ignored it. Let her panic. Let her wonder where we were and what I was planning. Let her get a taste of what it felt like to have someone you trusted just disappear without explanation. The first call I answered was from my foreman, Gus. "Tom, where the hell are you? We've got the Morrison job starting today, and you're supposed to be on site at 7. "Family emergency," I said. "I need you to handle things for a few days. Can you do that?" Gus had been working construction longer than I'd been alive. He could run a job site in his sleep. "Yeah, I got it. Everything okay?" "It will be." The second call I took was more interesting. Rachel Miles, Aaron's wife, calling from a number I didn't recognize. "Tom, this is Rachel. I need to talk to you." Rachel was a nurse at the local hospital, a no-nonsense woman who'd always struck me as too good for Aaron. She had a way of cutting through bullshit that I'd always respected, even if we'd never been particularly close. "What can I do for you, Rachel?" I found the messages. Her voice was tight with controlled fury. "All of them. Aaron left his phone unlocked last night, and I saw everything. The photos, the plans, the way they've been laughing at us. So I wasn't the only one who'd been digging through evidence." "I'm sorry you had to see that." "Are you? Because I'm not. I'm glad I finally know what kind of man I married." She paused, and I could hear her breathing hard. "Where are you? Megan's been calling everyone, saying you kidnapped the kids." That got my attention. "Kidnapped? They're my children." "I know that, but she's spinning this like you're some kind of unstable maniac who snapped and took off with them. She's got half the town thinking you're dangerous." Of course she did. Megan had always been good at playing the victim when it served her purposes. "What do you think?" "I think you're probably the sanest person in this whole mess, and I think we should talk. In person." We agreed to meet at Murphy's bar when I got back to town. Murphy's was the kind of place where construction workers and hospital staff went to decompress after hard days. Dark, loud, and full of people who minded their own business. Perfect for a conversation that needed to stay private. I spent the next 3 days at Mike's, watching my kids play and planning my next moves. The messages from Megan started angry, then turned pleading, then went back to angry. Aaron sent a few texts too, trying to play the concerned friend angle. "Tom, we need to talk man to man. This doesn't have to get ugly. Too late for that, Aaron. It got ugly the moment you decided to screw my wife." On the 4th day, I drove back to town. I dropped the kids at my mother's house. She'd been filled in on the situation and was practically vibrating with righteous fury, and headed to Murphy's to meet Rachel. She was already there when I arrived, sitting in a corner booth with a half-empty beer in front of her. Rachel had always been attractive in an understated way, but tonight she looked like she'd aged 5 years in the past week. Her dark hair was pulled back in a messy ponytail, and there were circles under her eyes that spoke of too many sleepless nights. "You look like hell," I said, sliding into the seat across from her. You should see the other guy. She managed a bitter smile. Aaron's been staying at his shop since I threw him out. Apparently, he thought I'd be more understanding about his need for emotional connection with your wife. I ordered a beer from Sally, the bartender who'd been working at Murphy's since the Carter administration. The place was busy for a Wednesday night, filled with the usual mix of blue-collar workers and off-duty medical staff. Perfect cover for our conversation. So what's the plan? Rachel asked. You assume I have one. Tom, I've known you for 10 years. You don't make impulsive decisions. You plan everything from weekend barbecues to bathroom renovations. There's no way you grabbed your kids and left town without having some idea of what comes next. She was right, of course. I'd spent the past 4 days researching divorce lawyers, private investigators, and the legal implications of everything I was considering. I'd also been monitoring social media and getting reports from Gus about what was happening around town in my absence. The picture wasn't pretty. Megan had been making the rounds, telling anyone who'd listen that I'd stolen the children and disappeared without warning. She'd positioned herself as the abandoned wife, left to deal with the aftermath of her husband's mental breakdown. Aaron, meanwhile, had been playing the concerned friend, worried about my stability and the safety of my children. It was a masterful performance, and it might have worked if they hadn't been stupid enough to continue their affair in plain sight while playing their respective roles. Gus had seen them together at the diner on Tuesday morning, and little Mike from my crew had spotted Aaron's truck in our driveway Monday night. They're not even trying to hide it anymore, I told Rachel. Megan's telling everyone I abandoned her, but she's been sleeping in our bed with your husband every night since I left. Rachel's jaw tightened. I figured. He came by yesterday to get more clothes. Had the nerve to tell me he was staying with a friend until things cooled down. We spent the next hour comparing notes and evidence. Rachel had been thorough in her investigation, documenting Aaron's lies, his financial irregularities, and his pattern of infidelity that apparently went back years. Megan wasn't his first affair, just his most serious. I want to destroy him, Rachel said quietly. Not physically, but everything else. His business, his reputation, his ability to hurt anyone else the way he's hurt us. That's a dangerous thing to want. Is it? Because from where I'm sitting, it looks like the most reasonable response to what they've done. She leaned forward, her eyes hard. They made a choice to betray us, to humiliate us, to break up two families for their own selfish pleasure. Why should we be the ones to suffer the consequences? She had a point. I'd been thinking the same thing for days, but hearing it from someone else made it feel more real, more justified. What did you have in mind? Before Rachel could answer, the door to Murphy's swung open and Aaron walked in. He was dressed in his usual uniform of designer jeans and a polo shirt that showed off the muscles he was so proud of. Aaron had always been vain about his appearance, spending more on clothes and grooming than most women I knew. He spotted us immediately and started walking toward our table with the confident swagger that had probably impressed my wife. Aaron had always been the kind of guy who thought his charm and good looks could get him out of any situation. He was about to learn otherwise. Tom, man, I've been looking all over for you. He slid uninvited into the booth next to Rachel, who immediately scooted away from him like he was radioactive. We need to talk about this situation. It's gotten way out of hand. Has it? I kept my voice level, but I could feel the attention of the other patrons turning toward us. Murphy's was the kind of place where everyone knew everyone else's business, and word of this conversation would be all over town by tomorrow morning. Look, I know you're upset, but running off with the kids isn't the answer. Megan's worried sick about them. Is she? Because from what I hear, she's been too busy playing house with you to worry much about anything else. Aaron's confident expression flickered for just a moment. That's not... Look, things between Megan and me just happened. We didn't plan it. Sometimes people fall in love and there's nothing anyone can do about it. Fall in love. I repeated the words like they tasted bad. Is that what we're calling it? Yes, that's what we're calling it. Because that's what it is. Megan and I have a real connection, something she never had with you. I'm sorry if that hurts, but it's the truth. Rachel made a sound that might have been a laugh or a growl. A real connection. Is that what you called it with Jennifer from the bank? Or Lisa from the insurance office? Or that waitress from Denny's whose name I never bothered to learn? Aaron's face went red. That's different. Those were mistakes. What Megan and I have is real. What you and Megan have, I said quietly, is about to become very expensive. I stood up from the booth, but before I could leave, Aaron grabbed my arm. Big mistake. I'd been doing construction work for 20 years, and my forearms were like steel cables. Aaron's grip felt like a child trying to hold back a freight train. Don't make this harder than it has to be, Tom. Megan's already filed for emergency custody. She's telling the court you're unstable and potentially dangerous. If you keep this up, you're going to lose everything. I looked down at his hand on my arm, then back at his face. The bar had gone quiet around us, and I could feel dozens of eyes watching our confrontation. Aaron, I said, loud enough for everyone to hear, take your hand off me before I demonstrate exactly how dangerous I can be. He let go immediately, but his expression was still smug. You can't threaten me in front of all these witnesses. I'm not threatening you. I'm making you a promise. I leaned down so only he and Rachel could hear me. You wanted to play games with my family. Now you get to find out what happens when someone plays games with yours. I walked toward the door, but stopped and turned back when I reached it. The entire bar was watching now, waiting to see what would happen next. Oh, and Aaron, next time you want to borrow my truck to take my wife to that motel out on Route 9, you might want to remember that I installed a GPS tracker in it last year after it got stolen from the job site. The color drained from his face. Behind him, I could see Rachel pulling out her phone, probably to check the location data I'd just handed her. I walked out of Murphy's feeling better than I had in days. Aaron thought he'd been clever, using my own truck for his affair while I was working late. He thought he was rubbing my nose in it, adding insult to injury. What he'd actually done was give me a detailed record of every time and place he'd met my wife over the past 6 months. GPS data, timestamps, and a clear pattern of behavior that would be very difficult to explain away in divorce court. As I climbed into my truck, I could see Aaron through the window of Murphy's, gesticulating wildly while Rachel stared at her phone screen. By tomorrow morning, half the town would know about the GPS tracker and what it had revealed. By tomorrow afternoon, the other half would know too. Aaron had wanted to humiliate me by conducting his affair with my property. Instead, he'd just handed me the evidence I needed to destroy him. I drove home thinking about what Rachel had said. They'd made a choice to betray us, to humiliate us, to break up 2 families for their own selfish pleasure. Why should we be the ones to suffer the consequences? She was right. It was time for Megan and Aaron to start suffering some consequences of their own. Megan's emergency custody hearing was scheduled for the following Monday, which gave me exactly 4 days to prepare. I spent them wisely. First, I hired Janet Morrison, the best divorce attorney in 3 counties. She was expensive, ruthless, and had a reputation for eating opposing counsel alive. When I walked into her office with 3 folders full of evidence, she actually smiled. Mr. Jacobs, in 20 years of practice, I've rarely seen a case this well documented. Your wife's attorney is going to have a very bad day. Second, I retrieved my children from my mother's house and moved back into our family home. Megan had been staying there with Aaron, treating it like their personal love nest. They'd made the mistake of getting comfortable, leaving evidence of their cohabitation scattered throughout the house. I found Aaron's clothes in my closet, his toothbrush in my bathroom, and his expensive whiskey in my liquor cabinet. I carefully documented everything, then packed it all into garbage bags and left them on the front porch with a note. Forgot your things. Don't come back for more. The look on Megan's face when she pulled into the driveway that evening and saw me mowing the lawn while our children played in the backyard was worth the price of admission. She sat in her car for a full 5 minutes, probably calling Aaron or her lawyer, before finally getting out and marching toward me. "You can't just move back in here," she said, having to raise her voice over the mower. "This is my home too." I shut off the engine and looked at her. Megan was dressed for battle in a conservative blue dress and minimal makeup, probably on advice from her attorney. She was trying to look like the responsible parent, the wronged wife, the victim of her unstable husband's erratic behavior. "You're right," I said. "It is your home too, at least until the divorce is finalized. I assume you'll be staying here tonight?" She hesitated. Aaron and I thought it would be better if we maintained some distance until after the hearing." "Probably a good idea. Wouldn't want the judge to get the wrong impression about your priorities." Her face flushed red, but before she could respond, Ellie came running over from the swing set. "Mom, Dad made hamburgers for dinner. Are you staying?" Megan's expression softened as she looked at our daughter. Whatever else she was, Megan did love our children. That was going to make what came next even more devastating for her. "I can't tonight, sweetheart, but I'll see you very soon, okay?" She kissed Ellie's forehead, waved to Max, and got back in her car without another word to me. As she drove away, I noticed Aaron's truck following her from where it had been parked around the corner. Apparently, he didn't have the courage to face me directly. Smart man. The custody hearing was held in the Penobscot County Family Court, a modern building that tried to look friendly, but still managed to feel intimidating. Megan arrived with her attorney, David Walsh, a local lawyer with a decent reputation, but nowhere near Janet's skill level. Aaron was with them, dressed in his best suit and playing the role of supportive friend. Judge Franklin was a stern woman in her 60s who'd been handling family court cases for over 2 decades. She had a reputation for no-nonsense decisions and a particular dislike for parents who used their children as weapons in divorce proceedings. Megan's attorney went first, painting a picture of an unstable husband who'd kidnapped his children and fled the state without warning. He described me as emotionally distant, potentially violent, and unable to cope with the reality of my wife's need for space in our marriage. "Your Honor," Walsh said, "Mrs. Jacobs simply asked for some time to work through their marital difficulties. Mr. Jacobs responded by taking their children and disappearing for nearly a week, leaving Mrs. Jacobs frantic with worry about their safety and well-being. It was a compelling narrative, and if I hadn't known the truth, I might have been convinced myself." Megan played her part perfectly, dabbing at her eyes with a tissue and looking appropriately concerned. Then Janet stood up, and the temperature in the room seemed to drop 10 degrees. "Your Honor, I'd like to present some evidence that puts Mrs. Jacobs's concerns in a rather different light." The first exhibit was printouts of the text messages between Megan and Aaron, carefully redacted to remove the most explicit content, but leaving enough to make their relationship crystal clear. The timestamps showed the affair had been going on for 6 months, with messages sent during work hours, family dinners, and even during our children's school events. The second exhibit was the GPS data from my truck, showing a clear pattern of visits to the Route 9 motel, Aaron's house when Rachel was at work, and even our own home when I was supposed to be out of town on business. The third exhibit was financial records showing Megan had been using our joint credit card to pay for hotel rooms, expensive dinners, and gifts for Aaron, all while telling me we needed to cut back on household expenses. But the fourth exhibit was the one that really got Judge Franklin's attention. Photographs taken by a private investigator I'd hired, showing Megan and Aaron leaving our children alone in the house while they went out together, with timestamps proving the kids had been unsupervised for hours at a time. "Your Honor," Janet said, her voice cutting through the courtroom like a blade. "Mrs. Jacobs didn't ask for space in her marriage. She announced that she'd been conducting an affair for 6 months and intended to continue it regardless of her husband's feelings. When Mr. Jacobs removed his children from what had become an unstable and inappropriate living situation, he was acting as any responsible parent would." Megan's face had gone white. Her attorney was frantically shuffling through papers, clearly unprepared for the evidence Janet was presenting. Aaron, meanwhile, was staring at the floor like he wanted to disappear through it. Judge Franklin studied the evidence for what felt like an eternity before speaking. "Mrs. Jacobs, is it true that you've been conducting an extramarital relationship with Mr. Miles for the past 6 months?" Megan's voice was barely a whisper. "Yes, Your Honor." "And is it true that you left your minor children unsupervised on multiple occasions to meet with Mr. Miles?" The children were asleep. I was only gone for a few hours. Hours during which anything could have happened to them, and you would have been unreachable because you were engaged in an extramarital affair." Judge Franklin's tone could have frozen water. She turned to Aaron, who was trying to make himself invisible in his seat. "Mr. Miles, I understand you're also married?" "Yes, Your Honor, but we're separated." "As of when?" Aaron's mouth opened and closed like a fish. "Last week, Your Honor." "So, for the 6 months you were conducting this relationship with Mrs. Jacobs, you were still married to your wife and living in the marital home?" "Yes, but—" "And you participated in leaving minor children unsupervised while you conducted this affair?" Aaron looked like he was going to be sick. "I didn't think—" "No, Mr. Miles, you clearly didn't think. About the children's welfare, about your own family, or about the consequences of your actions." Judge Franklin turned back to Megan. "Mrs. Jacobs, your petition for emergency custody is denied. Furthermore, I'm ordering a full investigation into the circumstances surrounding your children's care during the period of your extramarital relationship. If the Department of Human Services finds evidence of neglect or endangerment, this court will consider more serious sanctions." The gavel came down like a gunshot. Megan burst into tears, and Aaron finally looked up from the floor, his face a mask of panic and rage. As we filed out of the courtroom, Aaron caught up with me in the hallway. "You son of a bitch," he hissed, keeping his voice low enough that the bailiffs wouldn't hear. "You set us up." "I documented your behavior," I corrected. "There's a difference." "This isn't over." "You're right about that." I walked away, leaving him standing in the courthouse hallway with his fists clenched and his face red with impotent fury. Megan was crying in her attorney's arms, and I could hear Walsh trying to explain how badly they'd underestimated the evidence against them. Outside the courthouse, Janet shook my hand with obvious satisfaction. "That went better than I expected," she said. Judge Franklin was clearly disgusted by their behavior. We should start preparing for the divorce proceedings immediately while we have momentum. As I drove home, I passed Aaron's auto shop and noticed something interesting. There were fewer cars in the lot than usual, and the big electronic sign that usually advertised his services was dark. Word was apparently getting around about his role in breaking up 2 families, and it was starting to affect his business. Good. That was just the beginning. When I got home, I found Rachel sitting on my front porch with a bottle of wine and a grim smile. "I heard it went well," she said. "Judge Franklin wasn't impressed with their parenting choices." "I filed for divorce this morning. Aaron's been served. He's also being evicted from the shop. Turns out his lease has a morality clause that his affair violated." I sat down next to her on the porch steps. "How are you holding up?" "Better than I expected. It's amazing how much easier it is to end a marriage when you stop pretending it was worth saving." She opened the wine and handed me the bottle. "I also did something else today." "What's that?" "I called Aaron's biggest client, Morrison Construction, and told them about his habit of using company resources for personal affairs. Apparently, he'd been using their account to pay for some of his hotel visits with your wife. Morrison Construction was the largest contractor in the county, and they accounted for about 40% of Aaron's business. Losing them would be devastating to his shop. That's thorough. I'm just getting started. Rachel's smile was sharp enough to cut glass. Aaron wanted to destroy our marriage for his own pleasure. Now he gets to find out what it feels like to lose everything that matters to him. We sat on the porch drinking wine and watching the sun set over our quiet suburban street. It looked peaceful, normal, like nothing had changed. But underneath that surface calm, two lives were being systematically dismantled by the consequences of their own choices. My phone buzzed with a text from Megan. "We need to talk. This has gone too far." I showed the message to Rachel, who laughed. "Too far? She's just now figuring out that actions have consequences?" I deleted the message without responding. Megan had made her choice when she decided to betray our family. Now she was going to live with the results. The war was just beginning, and I was winning. The annual Harvest Festival was the biggest social event in our town, a 3-day celebration that drew families from all over the county. It was also the perfect venue for the next phase of my campaign against Megan and Aaron. I'd been planning this for weeks, coordinating with Rachel and enlisting the help of some unexpected allies. Gina Castellano, Megan's former best friend and co-worker at the dental practice, had reached out to me after the custody hearing. "I can't believe she did this to you and the kids," Gina had said when she called. "I mean, I knew she was unhappy, but I never thought she'd blow up her whole family for some midlife crisis." Gina worked as a dental hygienist alongside Megan at Dr. Patel's practice, and she'd been hearing things. Apparently, Megan had been using work time to text with Aaron, taking long lunch breaks to meet him, and generally neglecting her responsibilities while conducting her affair. "Dr. Patel is furious," Gina told me. "He's been getting complaints from patients about Megan's attitude and distracted behavior, plus she's been lying about why she needs time off." More importantly, Gina had been documenting Megan's workplace misconduct for months, thinking she was protecting the practice from potential problems. She had records of missed appointments, inappropriate phone calls, and even security footage of Megan leaving work early to meet Aaron. "I'll testify in your divorce if you need me to," she offered. Megan's been acting like she's the victim in all this, but she made her choices. She doesn't get to destroy everyone else's life and then play innocent. The festival opened on Friday evening with a parade down Main Street. I was there with Ellie and Max, watching the floats and marching bands like any other family. What made it different was the small airplane circling overhead, trailing a banner that read, "Aaron Miles and Megan Jacobs, Homewreckers of the Year." The idea had been Rachel's, but I'd paid for it. As the plane made its third pass over the crowd, people started pointing and reading the message. Within minutes, everyone at the festival knew exactly what Aaron and Megan had done. I spotted them near the bandstand, both looking like they wanted to crawl into a hole and die. Aaron was on his phone, probably trying to figure out who was responsible for the banner. Megan was scanning the crowd, her face red with humiliation and rage. When her eyes met mine across the festival grounds, I raised my beer in a mock toast and smiled. She started walking toward me, but Aaron grabbed her arm and pulled her back. Smart man. A public confrontation would only make things worse for them. The banner was just the opening act. Over the weekend, Rachel and I had arranged for several other surprises that would ensure Aaron and Megan's betrayal became the talk of the town. Gina had prepared flyers detailing Megan's workplace misconduct and distributed them to every dental practice in the county. By Monday morning, Megan would find it very difficult to get another job in her field. Little Mike from my construction crew had created social media accounts documenting Aaron's business practices, including his habit of overcharging customers and using inferior parts. The reviews were brutal and detailed, clearly written by someone with inside knowledge of his operations. But the most devastating blow came from an unexpected source: Aaron's own employees. Jake Morrison, Aaron's lead mechanic, approached me at the festival on Saturday afternoon. Jake was a good worker who'd been with Aaron's shop for 5 years, and he looked angry enough to chew nails. "Tom, I heard what Aaron did to you and your family. I wanted you to know that some of us at the shop are disgusted by it." "I appreciate that, Jake. There's something else you should know. Aaron's been skimming money from the business to pay for his affair with your wife. Hotel bills, expensive dinners, even jewelry. He's been charging it all to the shop's business account and claiming it as legitimate expenses. That was interesting. If Aaron had been using business funds for personal expenses, it could constitute fraud. More importantly, it would give his other investors grounds to force him out of the business entirely. Would you be willing to document that? Jake nodded grimly. I've been keeping records. Aaron's a good mechanic, but he's a terrible businessman and an even worse human being. The shop deserves better than him. By Sunday evening, Aaron's world was collapsing around him. The banner had made him a laughingstock, the online reviews were destroying his reputation, and his own employees were preparing to revolt against his leadership. Megan wasn't faring much better. Dr. Patel had called her into his office on Friday and suspended her pending an investigation into her workplace conduct. Gina had made sure that every dental practice in the area knew about Megan's problems, effectively blacklisting her from her chosen profession. I was at Murphy's bar Sunday night, celebrating with Rachel and some of my crew, when Aaron finally snapped. He burst through the door like a man possessed, his clothes disheveled and his eyes wild. He'd clearly been drinking, and he was looking for a fight. "Jacobs!" he bellowed, loud enough to be heard over the jukebox. "Where are you, you son of a bitch?" The bar went quiet. Sally reached for the phone, probably to call the police, but I held up a hand to stop her. "I'm right here, Aaron," I said calmly, not bothering to turn around from my conversation with Rachel. He stormed over to our table, swaying slightly. "You think you're so smart, don't you? The banner, the reviews, turning my own employees against me. You think you've won? I think you did this to yourself. Bullshit. You've been sabotaging me since the moment you found out about Megan and me. You can't stand the fact that she chose me over you." Rachel laughed, a sound like breaking glass. "Chose you? Aaron, she's been calling me all weekend, begging me to take you back so she doesn't have to deal with the mess you've made of both your lives." Aaron's face went white. "That's not... Megan wouldn't what? Abandon you the moment things got difficult? The same way she abandoned her husband and children?" Rachel pulled out her phone and showed him a series of text messages. "She sent these yesterday. Want me to read them out loud?" I couldn't see the messages from where I was sitting, but whatever they said made Aaron look like he'd been punched in the stomach. "She's scared," he said weakly. "This whole thing has been overwhelming for both of us." "Aaron," I said, finally turning to face him, "Megan doesn't love you. She never did. You were just a convenient way for her to blow up her life without taking responsibility for it. Now that there are consequences, she's looking for someone else to blame." "You're lying." "Am I? When's the last time she returned your calls? When's the last time she wanted to be seen in public with you? Face it, Aaron. You destroyed your marriage and mine for a woman who's already moved on to her next victim." Aaron lunged at me, but he was drunk and clumsy. I stepped aside easily, and he crashed into an empty table, sending glasses and bottles flying. Gus and little Mike were on their feet immediately, ready to back me up, but it wasn't necessary. Aaron was down and clearly not getting up anytime soon. "Sally," I called to the bartender, "better call this in. Aaron's had a rough weekend." The police arrived within minutes, and Aaron was arrested for public intoxication and disorderly conduct. As they led him away in handcuffs, I could see Megan's car in the parking lot. She'd been watching the whole thing, but she hadn't come inside to help him. Even she was abandoning Aaron now. Rachel and I finished our drinks and walked out to the parking lot together. Megan's car was gone. She'd left as soon as the police showed up, not wanting to be associated with Aaron's public meltdown. "Think that's the end of it?" Rachel asked. "Not even close. Aaron's going to be facing fraud charges once his business partners see Jake's evidence, and Megan's about to discover what it's like to be unemployed and unemployable in a small town. What about us? What happens when this is all over?" I looked at Rachel, this woman who'd become my unlikely ally in our mutual quest for justice. She was attractive, intelligent, and had proven herself to be absolutely ruthless when crossed. Under other circumstances, I might have been interested in exploring where our partnership could lead, but not yet. Not until Megan and Aaron had paid the full price for what they'd done. First we finish what we started, I said. Then we figure out what comes next. Rachel smiled, and there was something predatory in her expression that reminded me why I was glad she was on my side. I liked the sound of that. As I drove home, I thought about Aaron sitting in a jail cell and Megan facing the reality of her choices. They'd wanted excitement, passion, a break from their boring suburban lives. They were about to get more excitement than they could handle. The call came on a Tuesday morning while I was reviewing blueprints for the Morrison job. Megan's voice was small, defeated. Nothing like the confident woman who'd announced her affair 3 months earlier. "Tom, we need to meet. Please. This has gone too far." "Has it? You've destroyed both our lives. Aaron's business is finished. I can't get work anywhere in town, and the kids are asking questions I don't know how to answer. Enough is enough." I could hear desperation in her voice, and something else. Fear, maybe, or panic. Good. It was about time Megan understood what consequences felt like. "What did you have in mind?" "Somewhere private, where we can talk without the whole town watching." I suggested the Riverside Motel, the same place where she and Aaron had conducted their affair. The irony seemed appropriate, and I had my own reasons for choosing that location. "Room 237, I told her. "Tomorrow night at 8. Come alone." "What about Aaron?" "What about him?" "I thought you were done with Aaron. Isn't that what you told Rachel?" Silence on the other end of the line. Then quietly, "He'll want to be there." "I'm sure he will. Bring him if you want. But remember, Megan, you called me. This meeting is happening on my terms." I hung up before she could respond and immediately called Rachel. "They took the bait," I told her. "Tomorrow night at the Riverside. Are you sure about this? It's risky." "Everything worth doing is risky. Besides, we've got them exactly where we want them. Desperate, isolated, and looking for someone else to blame for their problems." The Riverside Motel was a relic from the 1960s, the kind of place that rented rooms by the hour and didn't ask questions. It was also the perfect location for what I had planned. I'd rented room 237 for the entire week, giving me time to prepare the space properly. The first thing I installed was a high-definition camera system, hidden in the smoke detector and behind the mirror. Everything would be recorded in crystal-clear detail, with backup files automatically uploaded to a secure cloud server. The second thing I did was invite some additional guests to the party. Jake Morrison, Aaron's former lead mechanic, would be in room 235 with a laptop and a direct feed from the cameras. He'd been eager to help once I explained what Aaron had done with the business funds. Detective Sarah Owens would be in room 239, officially off duty, but ready to intervene if things got out of hand. Sarah was a friend from high school who'd joined the state police after college. She'd been following the Aaron and Megan situation with professional interest, particularly after Jake had presented evidence of Aaron's financial crimes. "I can't be directly involved," she'd told me, "but if certain evidence happened to come to my attention during the course of this meeting, I'd be obligated to act on it." Rachel would be in the motel office, monitoring everything and ready to call for backup if needed. She'd also prepared some surprises of her own for the evening's entertainment. At exactly 8 o'clock, Megan's car pulled into the motel parking lot. Aaron's truck was right behind her, despite my suggestion that she come alone. They parked side by side and sat in their vehicles for several minutes, probably arguing about strategy. Finally, they got out and walked toward room 237. Megan looked like she'd aged 10 years in the past month. Her usually perfect hair was pulled back in a messy ponytail, and she was wearing jeans and a sweatshirt instead of her typical designer outfits. Aaron looked even worse, unshaven, hollow-eyed, and moving like a man who hadn't slept in days. I opened the door before they could knock. "Megan, Aaron, right on time." They entered the room cautiously, looking around like they expected to find an ambush waiting for them. In a way, they were right. "Sit down," I said, gesturing to the 2 chairs I'd positioned directly in front of the hidden cameras. "Let's talk." Megan perched on the edge of her chair like she was ready to run. Aaron remained standing, trying to project strength he clearly didn't feel. "Tom, this has to stop," Megan began. "What we did was wrong, but what you're doing is destroying innocent people." "Innocent people?" I laughed. "Megan, you conducted a 6-month affair with my best friend, used our children as cover for your meetings, and spent our family's money on hotel rooms and gifts for your lover. Aaron committed fraud against his own business partners to fund your relationship. Which part of that strikes you as innocent?" "We made mistakes. You made choices. There's a difference." Aaron finally spoke up. "Look, Tom, I know you're angry. You have every right to be. But this vendetta you're on is hurting more than just us. Rachel's been calling my clients, spreading lies about my business practices. Your construction crew has been leaving fake reviews online. You've turned half the town against us." "Have I? Or have I simply made sure that everyone knows exactly what kind of people you are?" "We're not monsters," Megan said. "We fell in love. It happens. People get divorced and remarry all the time." "People get divorced, yes. They don't usually conduct affairs while leaving their children unsupervised. They don't steal from their business partners to fund their relationships. And they don't try to gaslight their spouses into accepting betrayal." I pulled out my phone and showed them a video that had been recorded in this very room 3 months earlier. It was security footage from the motel's cameras, showing Megan and Aaron entering room 237, while my GPS tracker confirmed I was at a construction site 20 miles away. "You want to talk about love?" I said. "This is what love looked like to you. Sneaking around, lying to everyone who trusted you, and laughing about how stupid your spouses were for not figuring it out." Megan's face crumpled. "How did you get that?" "The same way I got the financial records showing Aaron used his business credit card to pay for this room. The same way I got the phone records showing you were texting each other during our children's school plays and birthday parties. The same way I got the witness statements from Aaron's employees about his theft from the company accounts." Aaron's face went white. "You can't prove any theft. I had legitimate business reasons for those expenses." "Did you?" "Because Jake Morrison has been keeping very detailed records of your legitimate business expenses." "Would you like to see them?" I opened my laptop and showed them Jake's documentation. Hotel receipts charged to the business account on days when Aaron had told his partners he was visiting suppliers. Restaurant bills for expensive dinners at romantic locations charged as client entertainment. Even jewelry purchases listed as promotional materials. "Jake's already turned this evidence over to your business partners," I continued, "and to the district attorney's office. Fraud charges should be filed within the week." Aaron collapsed into the second chair, his head in his hands. "You son of a bitch. You've destroyed everything." "I haven't destroyed anything. I've simply documented what you destroyed yourselves." Megan was crying now, mascara running down her cheeks. "What do you want from us, Tom? What will it take to make this stop?" "I want you to understand something. When you announced your affair, you told me I could accept it or be alone. You presented those as my only options, like you were in control of the situation." I stood up and walked to the window, looking out at the parking lot where their cars sat under the harsh fluorescent lights. "But you were wrong about that. You're not in control. You never were. You were just 2 selfish people making selfish choices, and now you're facing the consequences." "So what happens now?" Aaron asked. Before I could answer, there was a knock on the door. I opened it to find Detective Owen standing in the hallway, looking official and serious. "Mr. Jacobs, I'm sorry to interrupt, but I need to speak with Mr. Miles about some financial irregularities that have come to our attention." Aaron's face went from white to green. "I want a lawyer." "That's your right, sir. But first, I need you to come with me for questioning." As Detective Owens led Aaron away in handcuffs, Megan turned to me with desperation in her eyes. "Tom, please. I know I hurt you, but we have children together. Doesn't that mean anything to you?" "It means everything to me. That's why I'm making sure they understand that actions have consequences. That betrayal isn't acceptable. That people who make destructive choices have to live with the results." I walked toward the door, then stopped and turned back. "You wanted a new life, Megan. You wanted excitement and passion and freedom from responsibility. Well, here it is. You're free from your marriage, free from your job, free from your reputation, and free from any expectation that people will trust you again." I opened the door and stepped into the hallway. "Enjoy your freedom." As I walked to my truck, I could hear Megan sobbing in the motel room behind me. In the distance, I could see the lights of Detective Owens's patrol car as she drove Aaron away to face fraud charges that would likely result in prison time. Rachel was waiting by my truck, a satisfied smile on her face. "How do you feel?" she asked. "Like justice has been served." "What about Megan?" I looked back at the motel where my soon-to-be ex-wife was learning what it felt like to be truly alone. Megan made her choice. Now she gets to live with it. We drove away together, leaving the Riverside Motel and the wreckage of 2 marriages behind us. In the morning, the whole town would know that Aaron Miles had been arrested for fraud. They'd know that Megan Jacobs had been fired from her job and was facing a custody battle she couldn't win. They'd know that sometimes people who destroy other people's lives end up destroying their own in the process. And they'd know that Tom Jacobs wasn't the kind of man who accepted betrayal quietly. The war was almost over. I'd won every battle, destroyed every weapon my enemies had tried to use against me, and left them with nothing but the consequences of their own choices. But there was still one final blow to deliver. 6 weeks later, I was sitting in Murphy's bar with Rachel, celebrating the final divorce decree, when Aaron walked in. He looked like a broken man, hollow-eyed, unshaven, wearing clothes that had seen better days. The fraud charges had been dropped to a misdemeanor in exchange for his cooperation and full restitution to his former business partners, but the damage to his reputation was permanent. His auto shop was closed, his house was in foreclosure, and word around town was that he'd been living in his truck since Rachel had gotten their home in the divorce settlement. He spotted us immediately and started walking over, moving with the desperate purpose of a man who had nothing left to lose. "Well, well," Rachel said quietly, "look what the cat dragged in." Aaron reached our table and stood there swaying slightly. He wasn't drunk, at least not on alcohol, but he had the look of someone who'd been beaten down so far that he was operating on pure desperation. "You two must be real proud of yourselves," he said, his voice hoarse and bitter. "Should we be?" I asked. "You destroyed my life, my business, my marriage, my reputation. Everything I worked for, gone. And for what? Because I fell in love with the wrong woman?" Rachel laughed, but there was no humor in it. "Aaron, you didn't fall in love. You had an affair. You stole money from your business partners to fund it. You abandoned your wife and helped Megan abandon her children. Don't dress it up as some grand romance." "At least I felt something. At least I was alive. You two are just cold, calculating machines. You don't know what love is." "Love?" I stood up, and Aaron instinctively took a step back. "You want to talk about love, Aaron? I loved you like a brother. I trusted you with my family, my home, my life. Megan loved our children enough to put them at risk while she snuck around with you. That's what love looked like to both of you. That's not—" "Shut up." My voice was quiet, but it cut through his protests like a blade. "You had your chance to talk 6 months ago when you were screwing my wife and laughing about how stupid I was. Now it's my turn." The bar had gone quiet around us. Everyone was watching, waiting to see how this final confrontation would play out. "You want to know what love is, Aaron? Love is working 60-hour weeks to support your family, Love is coaching Little League and helping with homework and being there when your kids need you. Love is staying faithful to your wife even when the marriage gets boring. Love is keeping your promises even when it's hard. I stepped closer, and Aaron backed up against the bar. What you had with Megan wasn't love, it was selfishness. It was two people who were too cowardly to deal with their real problems, so they decided to blow up their lives and blame everyone else for the consequences. You don't understand. I understand perfectly. You thought you could have everything you wanted without paying any price for it. You thought you could destroy two families and walk away clean. You were wrong. Aaron's face was red with rage and humiliation. So what now, Tom? You've won. You've got your revenge. Megan's working at a diner in Bangor because no dental practice will hire her. I'm living in my truck because I can't afford rent. My own kids won't talk to me. Are you satisfied? I looked at this man who had once been my closest friend, who had betrayed me in the worst possible way, who was now broken and desperate and looking for someone to blame for the wreckage of his life. Aaron, I said quietly, I didn't do this to you. You did it to yourself. Every choice, every lie, every moment of selfishness that brought you to this point, that was all you. I walked back to my table and sat down next to Rachel. Aaron stood there for a moment longer, looking like he wanted to say something else, but the words wouldn't come. Finally, he turned and walked out of Murphy's bar, his shoulders slumped in defeat. Through the window, I could see him getting into his battered truck and driving away into the night. Think we'll see him again? Rachel asked. Probably not. Word is he's leaving town, going to stay with his brother in Florida until he can figure out what to do next. And Megan? Megan's already gone, moved to Bangor last week. She gets supervised visitation with the kids every other weekend, but that's it. Rachel raised her beer in a toast. To consequences. To consequences, I agreed. We drank in comfortable silence, watching the other patrons of Murphy's bar go about their evening routines. Life was returning to normal in our small town, but it was a different kind of normal. Everyone knew the story now. Everyone understood what had happened when two people decided their own desires were more important than the families they'd promised to protect. So, what happens now? Rachel asked. For us, I mean. It was a fair question. Over the past 6 months, Rachel and I had become partners in our quest for justice. We'd planned together, fought together, and won together. But now that the war was over, we had to figure out what came next. I don't know, I admitted. I know I'm not ready for anything serious. The divorce is final, but I'm still processing everything that happened. The kids need time to adjust. I need time to figure out who I am when I'm not planning someone's destruction. Rachel nodded. I understand. I'm not ready either. But maybe when we are ready, we could figure it out together. Maybe we could. My phone buzzed with a text message. It was from Ellie. Dad, when are you coming home? Max wants you to help him with his science project. I smiled and showed the message to Rachel. Duty calls. Go. Your kids need you. I stood up and threw some money on the table. As I headed for the door, I took one last look around Murphy's bar. This place had been the scene of so many confrontations over the past few months. It was where Aaron had tried to intimidate me, where he'd finally broken down, where the whole town had watched our drama play out. But tonight, it was just a bar again. People were laughing, talking, enjoying their evening without the weight of other people's betrayal hanging over them. I drove home through the quiet streets of our small Maine town, past the house where Aaron used to live, now occupied by a young family with 2 small children, past the dental practice where Megan used to work, now advertising for a new hygienist, past all the places where our old life used to exist. When I pulled into my driveway, I could see the warm light of our living room windows and the silhouettes of my children working on homework at the kitchen table. This was what mattered. This was what I'd been fighting to protect. I walked into the house to find Max surrounded by poster board, markers, and what appeared to be the beginnings of a volcano. "Dad, I need help with my science project. It's due tomorrow, and I can't get the volcano to work right." "Let me see what we're dealing with here." For the next 2 hours, I helped my son build a working volcano while Ellie finished her math homework at the kitchen table. It was ordinary, domestic, exactly the kind of boring family evening that Megan had found so unbearable. I wouldn't trade it for anything. As I tucked the kids into bed, Ellie asked the question I'd been dreading. "Dad, is Mom ever coming home?" "No, sweetheart. Mom and I are divorced now. She lives in a different city, but you'll still see her on weekends." "Are you sad?" I thought about that for a moment. Was I sad? 6 months ago, the answer would have been yes. But now, after everything that had happened, after seeing who Megan really was underneath the facade of the perfect wife and mother, I realized that sadness wasn't what I felt. "I'm not sad," I told my daughter. "I'm grateful. Grateful that we found out the truth. Grateful that we don't have to live with lies anymore. Grateful that we have each other." "Me too," Ellie said, and hugged me tight. After the kids were asleep, I sat on my back deck with a beer, looking out at the yard where Aaron had once helped me build a swing set for the children. The swing set was still there, but everything else had changed. My phone rang. It was Rachel. "I just wanted to say thank you," she said, "for everything, for showing me that I didn't have to just accept what Aaron did, for helping me fight back, for proving that sometimes the good guys actually do win. We both won, Rachel. We both got our lives back." "Yes, we did. And Tom? When you're ready to figure out what comes next, I'll be here." After we hung up, I sat in the quiet darkness of my backyard and thought about everything that had happened. 6 months ago, my wife had told me I could accept her betrayal or be alone. She'd thought those were my only options. She'd been wrong about that, just like she'd been wrong about so much else. I wasn't alone. I had my children, my work, my friends, and the respect of everyone who'd watched me handle the worst betrayal imaginable with dignity and strength. Aaron was alone, living in his truck and running from the consequences of his choices. Megan was alone, working at a diner and seeing her children only on supervised visits. They'd wanted excitement, passion, and freedom from responsibility. They'd gotten exactly what they asked for, and it had cost them everything that actually mattered. As for me, I'd gotten something better than revenge. I'd gotten justice, I'd gotten the truth, and I'd gotten my life back. The war was over. I'd won every battle, not through violence or illegal schemes, but by simply making sure that everyone knew exactly who Aaron and Megan really were underneath their masks of respectability. They'd destroyed themselves with their own choices. I'd just made sure the whole world was watching when they did it. Tomorrow, I'd wake up in my own house, make breakfast for my children, and go to work building something useful and permanent. I'd live with honor and integrity, the way I always had. Aaron and Megan would wake up in their separate exile, living with the consequences of their betrayal, knowing that they'd thrown away everything good in their lives for a few months of selfish pleasure. Justice had been served. The guilty had been punished. The innocent had been protected. And Tom Jacobs had proven that sometimes, when you refuse to be a victim, you can turn the tables on the people who tried to destroy you. You wanted a new life, Megan. Here it is. Enjoy the wreckage.